Hello, today I'm tying the barren Atlantic Salmon Fly, a pattern from T.E. Pryce-Tannat's book, How to Dress Salmon Flies. The hook is a Daiichi 2051 salmon hook, size 3/0. The thread for the first part of the fly is the Uni-Nylon 70 Denier white, a flat, floss-like thread. Start the thread at the return eye and trim the tag. For the tinsel on the tag, I'm using the Lagartun Gold Fine Oval Tinsel. Prepare a piece of the oval tinsel by removing a section of tinsel down to the core. Secure the tinsel by the core from underneath the hook. Wrap with smooth wraps to that point and set it so the tinsel portion is even with the barb. Wrap with smooth wraps along the core to the tinsel. Wrap a smooth base for the tinsel and spiral the thread out of the way. Wrap the tinsel edge to edge for 5 turns. Strip the tinsel to the core again. Unwind and flatten the thread and secure by the core with smooth wraps to the point, and trim the excess. Wrap the thread to the start with flat, smooth wraps and trim any excess tinsel. Next, take a strand of red silk floss. Secure the silk strand from underneath the hook at the start of the wrap with smooth, flat wraps all the way to the tinsel. Wrap a smooth base to the point, spiral the thread out of the way and burnish the area. Wrap the silk floss along the smooth base, unwind the thread and secure the floss along the threaded area with smooth flat wraps. Fold the silk back and secure with smooth wraps, then fold the silk forward and secure with smooth wraps to the start of the threaded area and trim the rest. This gradually builds up the body. Build up the thread with smooth wraps, keeping the thread flat to the end of the tag. Burnish the threaded area and the tag so it's smooth. Prepare the golden pheasant crest. I want it slightly longer than the bend of the hook and trim the excess. Flatten the stem and secure on top of the hook and centered. And wrap the thread forward with smooth wraps to the start. Whip finish and trim. Next, I'm switching over to the Uni-Thread 17-aught Trico. Start the thread and trim the tag. Wrap the thread along the threaded area with smooth wraps to the base of the tail. Next, prepare an Indian crow or a substitute feather for the first part of the veil. Flatten the stem. Secure on top of the golden pheasant tail and centered. The length of the veil is half the length of the golden pheasant tail. Add the blue chatterer for the next part of the veil. Secure on top of the Indian crow and centered with smooth wraps. Take a strand of ostrich herl, trim the stem at the base and strip away the fibers from the butt. Secure the herl by the stem at the base of the tag and build up the base for the butt. Trim the excess stems flush with the wrap. Build up the thread and spiral the thread out of the way. Wrap the herl edge to edge along the base for 5 turns and secure from underneath the hook. Whip finish and trim the thread. I'm switching to the Semperfli Nano Silk 18-aught for the next part of the fly. Start the thread and trim the tag. For the rib on the first part of the body, I'm using the Uni-French medium oval silver tinsel. For the body, I'm using the Uni-Mylar flat gold silver tinsel size 14. Prepare a piece of the medium oval tinsel by removing a section of tinsel down to the core. I want that section slightly longer than the threaded area on the hook. Secure the tinsel by the core from underneath the hook with a few wraps and set it so the tinsel portion is even with the ostrich herl butt. Add the flat tinsel beside the oval tinsel and secure with firm, smooth wraps to the base of the butt. Keep the tinsels parallel to each other when wrapping the thread to get a smooth, even body. Wrap the thread back to the start with smooth wraps and trim any excess tinsel. Build up the thread around the trimmed ends with smooth wraps so it's even with the rest of the body. Burnish the threaded area for a smooth underbody. Measure the center of the threaded area and mark it. Wrap the tinsel to the mark with smooth edge-to-edge wraps. keeping tension on the tinsel as you're wrapping. Unwind the thread and secure the tinsel at the mark with smooth wraps and trim the excess. Spiral the thread out of the way and wrap the oval tinsel as a rib for 4 wraps. Evenly spaced and angled. Remove the tinsel down to the core. Unwind the thread and secure by the core at the mark. Trim the excess. Build up the thread with smooth wraps to the end of the threaded area, whip finish and trim. Start the 17-aught Trico thread again. Trim the tag and wrap with smooth wraps to the center and whip finish. Next, prepare an Indian crow feather. Measure the feather so the tips are even with the ostrich herl butt and the stems are even with the center of the hook. Flatten and bend the stem. Secure on top of the hook and centered by the stem with smooth flat wraps. Repeat on the opposite side with the matched Indian crow feather. Flatten and bend the stem and secure with a few wraps and make any adjustments to center the feather. Build up the thread over the stems with a few wraps and whip finish. Take a strand of the ostrich herl, strip away the fibers from the butt, secure the herl by the stem at the base of the completed section. Trim the excess stems. Build up the base for the butt and spiral the thread out of the way. Wrap the herl edge to edge along the base for 5 turns. Unwind the thread and secure the rest of the herl along the threaded area. Trim the excess, whip finish, and trim the thread. Start the Semperfli Nano silk 18-aught thread again and trim the tag for the second half of the body. Prepare the same oval tinsel as the first part of the body. Secure the oval tinsel by the core, with the tinsel portion even with the herl. Secure the small flat silver embossed tinsel beside the oval with a few wraps. Grasp both tinsels firmly and parallel to each other while wrapping. Build up the thread and trim the excess tinsel. Add the black silk floss along the threaded area with smooth wraps to the ostrich herl butt. Burnish the threaded area for a smooth underbody. Build up the thread with smooth wraps. Wrap the silver oval tinsel for 5 turns, evenly spaced and angled, around the threaded area and mark where the second rib falls. Unwind the tinsel, build up the thread to the herl. Burnish the threaded area and wrap the thread to the mark. Next, prepare the dyed burgundy red hackle, flatten the stem and fold the hackle. Secure the hackle from underneath the hook starting at the mark with smooth wraps to the end of the threaded area. Build up the thread with smooth wraps and burnish the area. Move the hackle aside and wrap the thread over it to keep it in place. Wrap the black silk floss forward, slightly overlap, behind and in front of the hackle to the end of the threaded area. Secure and trim the tag and burnish the silk body. Wrap the silver oval tinsel first. Have the second rib fall to the right of the hackle stem. Wrap for 5 turns, evenly spaced and angled. Remove the tinsel to the core. Secure by the core with smooth wraps and trim the excess. Wrap the small flat silver embossed tinsel tight to the oval. Secure in behind the eye with flat smooth wraps and trim the tag. Wrap the folded hackle along the silver oval tinsel. Once you get past the body, wrap the remaining hackle as a collar with tight edge-to-edge wraps and secure by the stem. Trim the excess, build up the thread, wet finish, and trim the thread. Next, I'm switching over to the Semperfli Nano Silk 24/0 white. Start the thread and trim the tag and whip finish. Peel away the fibers from the hackle on top of the hook down to the stem. And pull the remaining fibers downward. Prepare 2 golden pheasant tippets. Flatten the stem. Trim and match the sections so they're both even. Secure by the flattened stem and centered. Have the tips even with the blue chatter. Trim the excess tippets on top of the feather and the excess stems. Build up the thread and whip finish. For the main wing, I'm using married strands starting from the bottom of the wing. Argus pheasant, dyed yellow and red turkey, 2 sections. Cory bustard, dyed blue and burgundy red turkey, 2 sections, and Argus pheasant. I start from the bottom and just keep stacking on top of each other. Each section is slightly longer than the last to get a taper on the wing. For this step, have your sections prepared and divided and ready to go, 1 wing at a time. Trim the ends at the shortest fiber so they're both even. Place both wings together back to back with the tips even. Bend the wings evenly to conform to the body. Have the tips just in front of the tail. Secure on top of the hook with a soft loop and a cinch wrap. Whip finish over the secured wrap. Adjust the wings so they sit properly by bending the wings in an arch and centered on the hook. Touch up any areas around the wing with a bodkin. Take a section of married strands of both wood duck and gadwall from each side of the stem. Secure with a soft loop and a cinch wrap. Marry the strands and set it so the wood duck is on top. Keep the stems intact so the fibers stay together. Take a section of the second side and secure it the same way on the right side of the wing, keeping the bars even with the first side. Trim the excess flush on the taper with a razor. Build up the thread with smooth wraps and whip finish. Next, prepare a dyed blue guinea fowl feather. Flatten the stem and fold a hackle. Choose a feather with the thinnest stem and the length of the fibers even with the fibers at the end of the body hackle. Trim the tip for the tying point and secure it tight to the body hackle from underneath the hook and whip finish. Wrap the hackle with tight edge-to-edge wraps along the tapered, threaded area. Secure by the stem. Trim the excess. Build up the thread and whip finish. Remove the fibers from the hackle on top of the hook down to the stem and pull the remaining fibers downward and build up the thread. Prepare 2 jungle cock feathers. Have the tip even with the first black bar of the wood duck. Remove the waste fibers from the stem at that point and match it with the second feather so they're both even. Flatten the stems on both feathers and secure on each side of the wing. Line up the feathers so they're both even. Next, prepare 2 segments of bronze mallard. Trim the segments from each side of the stem left and right and leave the stems intact. Have both sides even. Place the mallard segments back to back with the tips even and bend them the opposite way to conform with the main wing. Place both wings on top of the main wing so it straddles it evenly and secure it with a soft loop and a cinch wrap. Make any adjustments to the bronze mallard and build up the thread. Prepare 2 blue chatterer or substitute feathers for the veils. Measure the first feather, flatten the stem and secure with a few wraps. Match the second feather to the first, flatten the stem and secure the feather on the opposite side. Make any adjustments so both veils match. Next, prepare the golden pheasant crest. Use a proper crest that has the same arch as the wing. Measure, trim the excess, and flatten the stem for the tying point. Place the crest over the wing in the center and secure by the stem with a few wraps. Make any adjustments to center the crest. Prepare 2 blue macaw strands for the horns. Take a single strand from each side of the stem, left and right. Even out the tips and trim the butts so they're both even. Secure on each side of the wing. Build up the thread and whip finish. Trim the excess stems on a taper. Build up the thread, whip finish, and trim. Finish the head using black thread. Build up the thread to cover the white. Whip finish, trim, and add thin head cement. Finally, add the 5-minute epoxy evenly around the head. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe and hit the like button to see more.